Did you know that the world's economy, the everything of the world, has been in what's called, or has resulted from, the actions caused by a short squeeze situation across the board of all the stock markets? So how you define this? I'm going to say define. I mean, unthread, unpick. How do you see what this jigsaw? It's like a matrix, like a 3D jigsaw. Like if you've ever played Kaplunk, it's a bit like Kaplunk, and it's very typical, very nuanced of the stock market and the financial world to be thinking in these abstract forms. So, for example, the short squeeze. Yeah, short. So a short is a short position. So in finance, what that means is that a broker will go short on the borrow, on the loaning to pay back with interest, and there's another word, derivative or something like that. Like it's part of short selling. Short squeeze is a bracket within short selling. And this is what the world has fallen to, really. And it goes back to Lehman Brothers in a sense, because their valuation was like 40 billion in the black, and yet the position was actually minus 80 billion, which caused the company to collapse. So either Lehman Brothers or Bear Stearns, whichever one kicked off the 2008-2009 world crash that the economy obviously isn't returning back from, which started under, and I need to check this precisely, but from what I can tell, it's kind of under like the Keith Joseph, Margaret Thatcher years, because she changed all the banking laws in Britain, along with changing all the housing laws, which were always social housing, was available for everyone. The drive was to make it all private. Then you'd have to use banks to get mortgages, as the cost of everything goes up, which it did, which it hadn't from like the war or even before the war. So it was like £13 in 1982, 83 for a week's rent for a house in Britain, throughout the board, maybe a bit more expensive in London. So the scenario goes, like we could use a scenario. So let's say I bought my house for 6,000, because that was the general price of a house from the social housing. If you lived there for, I think it was over 10 years or something, you could buy the house for 6,000, whatever it was. Anyway, so let's say I've got 6,000. So then Johnny next door says, look, I'm going to sell mine for 7,000. I've got someone interested. Why don't you let me borrow yours and I'll sell that for 7,000 and we'll go 500 quid. So he's acting as a broker, so he's taking the short position. That's what that is. But what happens is, if Johnny from next door takes the house and agrees to pay me 7,000, the 500, so that's 6,500 and 500 for himself, whereas I could have only got 6,000 for it, let's say, on that day. But let's say the price of the houses increase to 12,000. Now I would expect him to get the 12,000, but let's say he sells it for 5,000, 7,000, gives me the 500. I'm like, hang on, the market is dictating 12,000 now. Why are you bringing me 500? You should be bringing me 5,500. That's the short squeeze Johnny would have been squoze on his short position. So it's dead interesting when you think of all these IT companies and how the world has kind of like been squoze on this short position, because basically all these IT companies are borrowing off the intangible assets of the company. You know, intangible assets would be like the potential value of the company from what it's aspiring to be, the productivity that could result in. So it's basically what they've got in their application for the loan to set up in business. So like a company, like this is where the bubbles come, and that's why they don't like getting audited ever, because an auditor will be looking like what are you actually worth, and he goes, well, you know, I've actually got all of these intangible assets. So the auditor's like, okay, fair enough, you know, you've got talent, you've got productivity value, you've got this, that and the other, and what tangible assets have you got held against those as liabilities? You know, what brings the value of those intangible assets down from your estimation? Or what can we add to, like if you own a property outright or whatever, you know, you own all the servers, I'm using an IT company, or you're just renting space and you're just hiring people with, how did they do it now? They gave them shares in the company. You know, that would kind of be like the sell, part of the salary structure or whatever, the wage structure. So basically all this is borrowed on promise, on potential, which is kind of like, it's kind of like a debt. You know, it's kind of like if it hasn't resulted in anything tangible, then it's kind of promised. So it kind of doesn't exist, which is a bit like a debt. You know, you can't put a debt in a wheelbarrow. So the economy's like being like backed, as it were, supported or buoyed up. You know, backed or supported, buoyed up. Liquidity being buoyed. So it kind of depends on like the description or the analogy that you're using to describe these situations. So I only found out about yesterday about this short squeeze situation through watching Billions with Paul Giamabobbi, you know, the Italian Gambini, whatever, really good actor, and he plays the US attorney, state attorney, no, the US federal attorney for the Southern State District of New York, and he's going after the kind of like a perpetrator who his wife works for. You know, he does everything to kind of like protect her as much as he can, because she's involved in all this Wall Street stuff, and he's already put 81 people in the story. I don't think 81 bankers ever went to jail in real life for anything. Like, I mean, a few of them anyway. So in the plot, I think it's 2 or 3 into the first series, comes up this short squeeze situation, which is it's all rallying around now. It's sort of like the hornet's nest is being kicked. The FBI are in it, the US Attorney General or Attorney, the US Federal Attorney, whatever he's called, and the SEC, you know, their compliance have come flying in and said, there's dodgy business going on here. We suspect it's this guy. And the US Attorney looks at it and he goes, oh no, it's actually this. You know, that we can see links under that. We've been looking at this, and this is like this is how Wall Street works. Anyway, on the flip side, Billions, the show, is showing you what all these people are thinking on the flip side. You know, some are good guys, some are like bend the rules a bit, and some are just out and out criminals, and know it, and that's how they operate, because they've got the shield of the good name of you know, the brokers who've built up a good reputation. So they're kind of like hawkers. They've come in and they're just leaning on the reputation of good people in order to do malicious actions and make a lot of money through racketeering, basically, because it's all a big cartel. And then there's lawyers as well who guide the way. It's kind of like law hasn't been built up for all of these financial representations of teams of people who are sitting there day in, day out thinking, how can we manipulate this system so that the illegal things we do can be wrapped up in a legal ribbon, pretty bow on top. So that's the game. And that the show, The Billions, is very reflective of what actually happens on Wall Street and is actually happening. So right now, the whole world is in this tailspin of madness because the productivity value is down. The Suez Canal is basically redundant while the war rages on there. The big dogs, China, America, Russia, who are perceived as the big dogs, India, Pakistan, the nuclear powers, none of them have told Israel to fall in line so that world commerce can continue, because that's the problem, is that the hornet's nest has been kicked, and it was as the Israeli Air Force were all on strike over the Supreme Court ruling that the Likud government couldn't overreach beyond the Supreme Court in Israel or something like that. So suddenly there was a war. Now all the Air Force pilots are all like duty bound to get back in their planes and forget all this political activity. So, it's all fallen rather convenient for Likud, which could or could not be a coincidence rather than a convenience. But certainly, like the analogy I used is that Likud are definitely aware of how to use pawns on the game of chess, and that's why chess was invented. Not only is it a game, it's an education tool to give you an understanding of political movement, political structure, political intrigue in very much in this sense. So sacrificing a pawn can be representative of a body of people, and very much reflects on the chessboard the movement of what's taking place. So as I say, the big dogs, the China, the Russia, the America, they haven't told Israel to fall in line so that world commerce. No, what they've done is they're all sending arms, weapons, blah, 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 ships and, armed forces to go and attack or defend or whatever, but keep the shipping lane open. But it doesn't keep the shipping lane open because they can't, because the Israeli war, basically, because the Houthis are saying leave the Palestinians alone, and they're saying, well, we'll attack Israel's allies. That's basically what it is, isn't it? But that's what the Suez Canal is being held for. So the short squeeze situation is that the world basically borrows the Suez Canal from whoever is in control of it, which appears to be the Allies, the Alliance, the NATO, whatever. Whoever's sent over troops to defend it against the other team, they're the ones who are being, they're the owners, and everyone else is borrowing it from them. But now the value of the Suez has gone right up high, and we can't afford to pay the short squeeze situation that we've been put in. We haven't even asked for it. To pay back the people who actually own it, whoever that may be. So And that's just one scenario, because you've got to think over the whole stock market. Like, think like an actuary. Like, I'm not just thinking of one position. I'm thinking that one position represents the template of all the other positions. You know, think of like if you'd had a needle and you wanted to punch a dot in dough, like rolled out dough. Or you get a fork, now you've got four prongs. Or you get a hedgehog. Well, hedgehogs, you attach it to an automated machine and you put it on a conveyor belt. So it's like you optimizing your productivity value. Well, we haven't got any. You can't optimize service industry. The whole world is basically now a service industry. China or other communist countries are the manufacturing hubs. So their industry is like, look at the arms dealing, the arms manufacture, the technology going behind that. Imagine if that was made for civil life rather than for military life. Imagine the actual, like you could have your flying shoes and you just fly to the floating convenience store, which has drones coming in with anything that everyone needs, on the fly. It's kind of like, the futuristic ideals have not been met except in the military. And the military is now offloading all of the old stuff now that the AI is prominent. So all of the manufacturing will be of a much more AI based solution military, because NATO haven't lost. A lot of the talk is on YouTube saying, "Oh, NATO can't win, can't win, can't win." But the thing is like you can't lose a war that you're funding. That's always been the economic advantage of being the banker on the monopoly board. So just even in this like short 17 minutes now, how many different ways, abstract ways to think, do you have to clamber around to organize some method, some frame to understand this short squeeze on the stock market? Like, obviously I'm only rough. I'm not sitting in New York, where probably people are more inclined to understand what a short squeeze is. But more on a technical point, I'm looking at it from, like, what's this overarching area? How can that be defined as a concept? Because, once you define something as a concept, now you can bring remedy to it. So what I'm saying is that, like even as a model, it's not like, oh, he's the genius, he's worked it all out. It's not. No, this is just a model of an understanding of how to grasp or how to ascertain the situation. Like, I think the short squeeze model is when you upscale it. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Everyone's borrowing off each other. The value of everything has gone up. Now the ones who've borrowed, who owe back to the owner, they can't afford to pay it back. So everything's collapsing. All the brokers are collapsing, so no trade can be done because that's their remit. And all the people with these high value things, commodities or whatever, have got no one to trade them because everyone's gone out of business, which is basically what's happened. And it's basically caused wars, which is weird. Weird, not weird. Because who will be backing, like, the foreign aid bill? I think Ukraine just got passed to have a load of aid, and Israel did, but they're not going to put aid on. But they're going to need to talk more about the Mexican border, like that's the US side. So what's the deal? Like, is it a loan? Well, it was to Britain in 1951 when the US gave them, I think it was 50 billion, and the UK defaulted on it. You know, the British Empire defaulted on a loan, a war loan, back to America, and it bankrupted Great Britain, basically. So whereas America was enjoying all the thrills and spills of being the victor, Britain wasn't. Britain was in massive debt because it had borrowed from persons unnamed the 500 million letter of credit that was given to Chamberlain on September the 1st, 1939, arrived on his desk saying, go to war and you've got 500 million, which is in Hansard, the parliamentary records, and it's also in other places if you look for it. So yeah, that's just my contribution to how I see how this short squeeze, which is part of short selling, so like a long position, I think would be when you actually buy stock or a share. Now you can go long with it because you own it, so it's like, it's latent. The hit on it is not so dangerous, whereas when you short, the hit on it is dangerous because like the value of it can change more out of your control. You're only borrowing on it. You're borrowing on the agreement of paying back with interest and with something else, dividend. That was it, not derivative, dividend, if any. I think that was how it was described on the website. I think I looked on 3 different websites just to make sure that my study was thorough. But yeah, because you can see it acted out in Billions. Like I've watched the whole Billions series once through already, and I never understood quite what was going on. But since I've watched it a few months ago, I've done a lot of background research into the study of like when I'm reading all of these investment portfolios and reports and articles and journals and all of, like, I read a lot. All books on accountancy, actuarial science. I'm always jumping on websites defining actuarial science or how the industry of the actuaries is going. So like it's a living study, and I think everyone's kind of in that. And then when it came to this short squeeze, I was like, I don't know what a short squeeze is. Oh yeah, I was looking at Tom Cruise for some reason. There was a reason I started to look at Tom Cruise, and I looked at what he was saying, and he was on about like shouldn't be giving kids Ritalin and adrenal, whatever the thing they give them is, adrenal, and I was like, yeah. But anyway, it was part of the Scientology drive, and some people saying like he has teams and they're all bullies or whatever. Don't quote me on it. There's YouTube things on it. The thing is like if people don't get sued for character assassination, then generally it's a load of rubbish whatever's being said. And I'm not seeing any lawsuits being brought. So I don't know. But the thing is, the first book, Dianetics or something, in the first line it just said, if you do not understand something in this book, read the definition in the glossary at the back or find the definition. So it's like, oh yeah, well that pulls a cord from when I studied law, because they'd always say like, if you don't understand something, go read the definitions, because sometimes you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to whatever nuanced definitions. There's modern definitions of words, there's antiquated definitions of words, and the whole purpose of words, like poetic license, you can use various like using French is a very English thing, a very sort of like peasant thing to show a bit of understanding of culture, and to get your point across in a more concise way, because like French being a more natural language rather than a hodgepodge, which English kind of has been, as it's been developing. That's just my little thing. The short squeeze got me, and it was like, if this video can reach anyone who can kind of grasp what it is that I'm offering, and they can kind of see it or add to it or whatever, be well interesting. Because like I haven't drawn it from watching, something unrelated to Wall Street. Like this is purely related to Wall Street, and this is purely related to law enforcement. It's purely related to, to now, because like, look at the situation now. Okay, well, how does Wall Street move? Okay, well, obviously Wall Street is still moving, so let's look at what Wall Street's doing. London's gone. London Stock Exchange is gone. It's like it's fallen off a cliff. It's just plummeting, nosediving, spiraling out of control, gone, dead. No one's investing in the London Stock Exchange. Although some companies are still making money, you think Rolls-Royce are, but they're not attracting for the future. They're not expanding. So if you're not in expansion, you're going to be in contraction, which is what the LSE is. It won't take much, I don't think, for other countries to attract the likes of Rolls-Royce, the companies who are making money. AstraZeneca apparently popped. The report was I seen last night, AstraZeneca is down 40%. They're not going to recover from that. They're just going to, like, no one's buying what AstraZeneca are selling. So you can't get investments, you can't set up pension funds on the back of what you're not selling. They're just going to go out of business, which is, it's a super risky investment for any broker, which even brokers are hating. Roger Elvich always said, when the year 2000 comes, it represents a polar shift, and that polar shift may well hit the brokers hard. And if you look at since 2000, it's popped them off like ducks on a rifle range, and that's going to be exponential. So yeah, Thatcher, I always say under Keith Joseph, because he seemed to be the prominent mover and shaker in the cabinet that she was the leader of, or whatever. The banking rules were changed in London under her watch, and that led to the LIBOR scandal, which is still, a deepest undercurrent in the ocean of liquidity in the financial world, which, as they say, you can run from the consequences of your actions, but you can't hide from the results of the consequences of your actions. And even though she's 6 foot under, the legacy is still there. So basically, I think what happens is a bit like the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act in America, where it was slightly different here because commercial banks and investment banks in London didn't have that separation of powers, where the investment bank had to only do insurance and reinsurance and like guaranteeing basically insurance. And commercial banks did, high street business, whatever, credit and debit, which is all a load of rubbish anyway. So the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act gave the Wall Street banks, the investment banks and the commercial banks reach to do either in selling insurance or just acting commercially. So there was no bounds. Anyway, that caused a crash. But it was it was started at the dot, the London interbank offer rate. So basically, at the end of every working day, a bank has to inform the London Stock Exchange of the loan rate on an average. So if it be like 0.5% or 1% or 1.5% of all the business they've done that day, the interest that they set to make for that business is going to be X% more than the result. So the interest, the London Interbank offer rate, the interest offered at the end of the day would be, let's say, 1%. But what the banks were doing, which is the crucial key, because it's compounding, it compounds and it's cumulative, is they were sending in false amounts, and they were sending in like 0.25 less or 0.5 less or more. I think it was less though. So the accounting for it, like if you've got, let's say 10,000 banks and they're all skimming off the top, 0.25, 0.5, whatever, every day at the London Interbank offer rate, you know, it's a physical kind of clearing house, the London clearing house. I think it's called Euro Clear now. They would be getting false information. So all of the calculations therefrom in order to run correct banking would all skew if. So if I left from here to New York and every day I lost 0.5 of a degree, by the time I ended up in the Amazon, I should be in New York, which is where I've planned for. So that's what happens with Thatcher, the LIBOR, London Interbank offer rate. You can check that up. I don't think she was clever enough to understand what it was that had been brought under their remit to do. I think they've just said, do this will make the economy dead boss. So everyone's driving around now in a Volkswagen Golf Coupe GT or a Porsche 911T, as the money accumulated in people's pockets, and the yuppies were born. That was the birth of the yuppies. Well, it was all done on bent calculations deriving from this change. And that's why I say I don't think she understood the gravity of the situation, because the policing wasn't there. And I think that's been, deliberate. Make sure the policing isn't there, because the financial world doesn't have policing per se. But watch that Billions and you kind of get a grasp of these concepts. And I think, if because people who probably watch Billions are only in-house people. It's going to be like a lot of people who write that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't really know, but I know that like everyone who I've spoken to since I've been watching it for 2 years, no one's seen it, not one person. And I speak to a fairly, reasonable amount of people on the daily, whatever. And no one picks up on it, no one watches it. And it's like, wow, the ostrich effect is like full on. But I can understand, because I spent 4 years studying money alone. Just done an in-depth study on, M1, M2, M3, M4, debentures, derivatives, loans, debit, debt, credit, letters of credit, promissory notes, commercial paper. All of these, it's all commercial paper at the end of the day. All of these methods and means, bearer bonds, all the different types of bonds, bid bonds, offer bonds, performance bonds. Like it's just, there's like court bonds, there's guarantee bonds. I did a seminar 2011, 2012, and I think there was 16 of us, and they were all bright people. And I grabbed a book, The Law of Guarantees it was, and we just studied 2 chapters, chapter 7 and chapter 11, just on those two. And that grounding of understanding those 2 chapters is absolutely key to understanding, like, the law of agency, the law of privilege. It just underpins even trust law. Even trust law is underpinned by the law of guarantee, the law of witness. Sort of like everything is based around guarantee, insurance. I think it's a public thing. I think it's sort of like a legal. It is a legal thing. This is weird, yeah, because lately I've done a study on legalism, and before legalism was the way of nature. That was, the moral code, the following the laws of the universe, and it changed to legalism. So now we're in the age of legalism. So it's dead profound in so much as, like, the money is ruled by, the money is the token of legalism. It's the method of showing tribute, as it were. So legalism isn't the way of nature. Legalism is what it is. And money is a Ponzi scheme, and stay away from it. It's the root of all money. I mean, I could just go on for hours about how the credit is not real. Like, that noise comes from real physical stuff. Credit doesn't make a noise. You can't tap on credit. You can't fold credit into a paper airplane. Physically, you can fold the paper that the ink is printed on, that represents the idea that this credit exists. And it's like in legalism, it's supposed to be the idea of agreement creates acceptance, which is pure contract law, which is pure commercial law. And even the word legal, from a trust law perspective, is a split in title. There's nothing legal where there's no split in title. So I've never split my title, but my title was split for me. So now I'm in legalism. Well, it's not a natural phenomenon. It's a man-made phenomenon. And as I say, it's ruled by laws. That's the offer. It's governed by money, which is the performance. So the offer is the bid and the performance. So you've got offer, performance. What was the other one? Acceptance. Oh yeah, tacit acceptance, I think. Offer, bid, performance. There's another part to, like, a contract, which is obviously worth something. That's the value. That's the bond. That's the guarantee. That's the money. That's the value. The accounting now will come in. The bookmaker will say, the bookkeeper will say, well, we've got this. So when the tax man comes, he can read the contract and say, like, this is 500 million, or this is £10, or whatever that contract is, to assess how much tax needs to be paid, levied, or whatever, as a fee to the shared legal title, because you're bearing the societal needs, is it? like what you need every day under the social contract is seen as a social event. But so because you're benefiting from one aspect of it, you have to pay in for the whole aspect, which is the law of general averages, which is a maritime law. So again, it's like legalism isn't really taught as a thing as that I know of. You know, it's certainly not taught to children. But if you said like to a child, okay, here's a lollipop for you, and then the child goes to throw it at a bus or whatever, and you step in and go, no, that's because you have right of title to the property that you've given the child, you know, as for their enjoyment, but not for throwing at buses. You know, generally that would be good moral code. So you can see how legalism and laws of the universe kind of meet there. But you can't always be on watch, and the kid may just throw it at the bus anyway. And, you know, you would then be held responsible if the child was under the age or whatever. So there's kinds of good logic behind the legalism, but it's not the holistic, full aspect of who we are and what we are. It's a societal aspect, which is more in line with like Confucianism, legalism. It's not truism per se. And the money isn't part of nature. The money's part of the structure of the society as a man-made event. So it doesn't follow the laws of nature, men or people. You know, animals, birds, fish, the universe itself, they all follow the laws of nature. The laws of nature don't dictate that nature follows another law. You've never woke up with the sky below and the earth above. You know, that's a fundamental of a law of nature. So money isn't governed by, it's supposed to be, but obviously you get wrapped up in litigation. You've got lawyers who've thought ahead far, far more than you, all the contingency plans, and, you know, they've got the actuaries thinking of how risk is to be analysed and what ways they can move forward, and you just burn out of money basically, debt, because it's not a natural. You can't go and dig for money, and you can dig for stuff that can bring you money, but you're held with more liability than if you kind of cut a tree down, built a house, you know, got your water from a well, all the stuff that society's supposed to be based upon has been put in this short squeeze situation. As I see it, everything's been borrowed by the legal system. The value of nature is now higher than the legal system can afford to pay back with interest and dividends. So it's all collapsing as a part of the laws of nature. That I think there is the conclusion of this little lecture, if we can call it that, because you know, it's quite a ride, that one, quite a trip. But that's how I kind of grasp what's going on at the minute. So if we leave it at there, go and have a cup of tea and maybe a little bit of dark chocolate just to balance out your blood sugars, and get on the billions and start studying this amazing play. It's like a play, theatrical play of, you know, what's gone wrong with Wall Street and everything, because it's not just Wall Street, but it's like proper, you know, if it happened today, there's definitely a scene in Billions that is happening today in Wall Street, that put it that way, and tomorrow and the day after. So it's a classic in that sense. You know, I don't think it'll ever be promoted the way I'm promoting it. I'm sort of saying like, here's the remedy, whereas maybe the people who are selling it are saying like, you know, this is the poison. Well, anyone who's got any sense knows that the poison is the remedy. Okay, that's about it then. Ciao for now.